January 8th, 2008, the sleepy dairy town of Stephenville, Texas. Looks nice, doesn't it? Another peaceful evening for Erath County Police Officer Leroy Gayton. And amateur pilot Steve Allen is suddenly destroyed by a close encounter of the first kind.
When I got out of my car, I saw this bright light, appeared to be changing colors.
It was real close, like 1,500 foot in the air and about 1,500 foot over from us. And whatever it was didn't make any noise at all. It was totally silent.
Everyone in the community has accepted that there was something strange happening the night of January the 8th, 2008 in Erath County.
The mysterious light show was witnessed by many others, and by morning, the whole county is reporting spooky UFO sightings.
You know, you'd always see the UFO shows on TV, and I really didn't believe in UFOs. I mean, I always thought there was a legitimate explanation.
I feel like these are from somewhere besides Earth. I don't think they're from Earth. It was almost like a biblical event. We couldn't come to a conclusion of what it was.
But for Steve Allen, the mysterious lights were just a half of it. He thinks the UFOs were joined in the sky that night by a far more familiar-looking aircraft.
We went into the house to figure out what happened, and somebody called and says they're coming back, and we ran outside, and that's when we saw the two F-16s in pursuit. And I thought, well, why is our government chasing something, you know, or what are we doing, you know, or are we at war with somebody, or could be end times, or a lot of things passed through my mind. And, you know, I kind of made a beeline after that to my house because I thought if there was a problem or something happening, I wanted to be at my own home with my family.
Cognitive neuroscientist Professor Allison Sekuler specializes in researching how the human brain interprets everyday events. She believes there may be a more down-to-earth explanation for the mystery of the Texas lights.
Officially, UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object. People don't like unidentified. The brain doesn't like unidentified. The brain's job is to make sense of the world. And so when people see something that is officially an unidentified flying object, because we don't know what it is, they do try to put it into some sort of sense. They try to make sense of it in some way.
You see, to Professor Sekuler, eyewitness statements, especially those of mysterious and hard-to-explain phenomena, are often innocent misinterpretations.
Different people can look at exactly the same thing out in the real world and see completely different things. Because the way that you see the world is not actually a reflection of what's physically out there. It's a reflection of how that information interacts with your brain. And so, because my brain has different sorts of perspectives on the world and different experiences, I'll interpret something differently than someone standing next to me who's had a different sort of life experience and a different perspective on what they're looking at.
So apparently, when faced with something new, the brain will look for answers by trying to match what we're seeing with something similar from our previous experience, memory, and cultural background. And of course, in the United States, seeing strange lights in the sky can only mean one thing.
Movies can have a big impact on the way that we think about and see the world. So if there hadn't been a whole flurry of UFO movies in recent history, it'd be less likely that all these people would have said, it's a UFO.
I'm not saying I saw a UFO, but with all the reports from everybody else, apparently that's what I saw.
There is no evidence that the Earth has been visited in the past or is being visited today by extraterrestrial aliens. No evidence whatsoever. It would be very difficult to travel the vast distances between the stars. You would have to have tremendous amounts of energy, lots of time to do this. It's not an easy proposition. It's not impossible, but it is very, very difficult.
James McGaha is a retired Air Force pilot and a complete skeptic about alien visitation. It's what a spoil sport. As far as he's concerned, he knows exactly how to explain the mysterious lights. They were military flares.
This is Stephenville right here. Here's where the aircraft were flying that night. At the exact time they were saying they saw lights in the sky, there were 8 F-16s in the area, flying maneuvers, both with afterburners, which produce lights, with their formation lights on, and they were dropping flares.
Now, you see, flares are used by the Air Force to solve two different yet equally important problems. One, there are ground illumination flares. These flares are dropped from aircraft in order to light up an area on the ground several miles wide. The flares are suspended in the air by a parachute. The heat from the flare helps to keep it aloft. Two, there are countermeasure flares. This kind is used to confuse enemy missiles targeted onto aircraft. The heat of these flares is hotter than the heat from the afterburner, causing heat-seeking missiles to lock onto and track the flare instead of the military jet. Interesting.
The aircraft were maneuvering all around, the flares were being dropped, so there was lights and everything. It would be very difficult for someone, unless they knew exactly what the military maneuvers were, to actually understand who was chasing what.
Okay, so I gotta admit, flares being dropped from F-16s in war game exercises seems like a plausible explanation for the Stephenville lights. But for some, this theory just doesn't add up. Could the U.S. government be covering up the truth? What really happened? Steve Allen is a private pilot. He saw the lights and isn't convinced they were simply military flares dropped by U.S. fighter jets.
Lights we saw traveled at a high rate of speed all the way from the east to the west and come back by with jets chasing it, and only like 1,500 feet off the ground. So yeah, what we saw was definitely not a flare. It was quite spectacular. They was on the same height and trajectory. You know, they was following it or attempting to keep up with it. You could see the full afterburner coming out the back of the F-16s, probably, you know, I'd say they was running in excess of 500 or 600 miles an hour themselves. Whatever, somebody had to authorize some excessive speed to try to catch up with whatever it was.
Allen's belief that the lights were UFOs actually being chased by fighter jets is supported by one crucial piece of information. If these were simply flares, why didn't the Air Force admit it?
Carswell Air Force Base in the military in Fort Worth originally denied anything out here, and then they denied that F-16s was there. And of course they was from here no further than 2 football fields away, so we know they was there.
Later on, as I discovered, there were indeed aircraft flying that night, and the Air Force, the Public Affairs Office, put out a press release saying we made a mistake. There was nothing more to it, nothing sinister at all to it, just a mistake.
Yeah, I think the military probably was trying to cover it up. Obviously, after the story first broke, they decided they had 10 F-16s in the area, and we all kind of lost the credibility with the military that they didn't know that they had their military jets in this area, especially 10 F-16s.
This is military communications expert Steve Douglas. He believes the Stephenville lights were indeed Air Force flares, but they were being used as part of a military cover-up, not to hide the existence of aliens, but something far scarier, to hide top-secret black ops. Whoa.
Well, as it goes with the Stephenville sightings, I think the truth is that a lot of people are seeing what they think are extraterrestrial spaceships. They're not. They're seeing military projects. I'm basically what you would call a black project researcher. I'm one of those guys who gets in a lawn chair and sits out on a mountaintop looking over a base that doesn't exist, hoping to see the odd secret spacecraft, airplane, whatever new widget the military is using.
One of these secret widgets currently flies over Afghanistan, the RQ-170 Sentinel, otherwise known as the Beast of Kandahar.
Because of guys sighting it and taking pictures of it, the Air Force came clean and said, yes, we have this thing flying and it's a surveillance platform.
A stealth drone with no metal parts, completely undetectable by enemy radar. That's entire existence was denied by the U.S. military until December 2009. Scary, but cool.
Just this year alone, the new military budget is at $108 billion, with $44 billion of it earmarked for covert operations alone. That's $44 billion that we have no idea what it goes into. And that's why there are guys like us.
Douglas also believes the Air Force may have another, still top-secret piece of surveillance hardware cruising high in the skies, not over a faraway combat theater, but right here, right now, over the United States.
We call it the stealth blimp, and it flies at very high altitude, 200,000 to 300,000 feet. You don't know it's up there, and it can do everything from listen to look to see. It's the ultimate flying big brother, is what a stealth blimp could be. You know, there could be one, listening to us right now.
According to Douglas, it was a malfunctioning stealth blimp that was to blame for what happened in the skies above Stephenville on January 8th, 2008.
Well, as it goes with the Stephenville sightings, I think was a combination of two events. I think it was some type of covert black projects operation, maybe like one of these stealth blimps was forced down and out of altitude. Because of it happening, which I think was just a happenstance, the military put on what I call a dog and pony show, which means they threw a bunch of fighters in the area, dropped some flares, made some lights as to kind of look over here, but not at that thing over there.
So were the mysterious lights over Stephenville that night simple flares used to distract attention from a black op gone wrong? Or were the flares being used in a routine exercise? Or were the good people of Erath County, like Steve Allen and the police officer Leroy Gayton, right all along? Could the origins of the Stephenville lights be from another world?
What the fuck?